very special episode of the Demons from Outer Space. Joining me as always, I have my very special guest, as in the guy I have every episode of this podcast, Dylan McCandless, aka Super DM64.
I like how I'm a very special guest. That's interesting.
You are a very special guest, indeed.
Co-host is the word most commonly used, but we went for very special guest. I see how it is.
Now,
I see.
this week you're a very special guest because we're continuing something that you started on your channel. So it kind of feels like we're doing like a weird interdimensional spatial two YouTube channels that are run by people who are friends type of deal with this week's episode of the Demons from Outer Space. So Dylan, why don't you tell us why it's a very special episode this week and why you're a very special guest?
To be fair, you run a YouTube channel. I occasionally dust mine off. We
I feel like mine's getting there though.
so Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger.
Indeed.
The series.
Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger.
The series most commonly known for having been adapted into the first season of Power Rangers and having recently, by recently I mean like last year, getting a DVD release for the first time in like the history of the world here in America through the wonderful Shout Factory, who have now gone on to release the following two Sentai, Ranger and Kaku Ranger, and have also announced that coming later this year, I think in like November or something, they will be releasing O Ranger. And then presumably further on down the line they'll get to Car Ranger and all that other shit.
Because somebody wants to watch that. Actually, I do. I would like to see Car Ranger.
I'm gonna watch it because I need to, but God, based on what I know about it, I just know.
I mean, we're gonna review it presumably after the trend we're setting here. So
I just know that it's not gonna be my cup of tea. Anyway.
Probably not.
Anyway, so Zyuranger, it's a DVD. We watched it. I watched it.
Several DVDs.
It is. It's a 10-disc set. I watched it long ago and was so excited by it and wanted to promote the fact that they were going to do a Zyuranger release if this one did good numbers. Now we're 3 releases later. Anyway, I was
good numbers, Dylan. You silly goose.
I was so excited by this series that I decided on my channel I was going to do a top 10 episodes video. And for some stupid reason, I decided I was going to split that up into 2 parts. And it was because of that, I think ultimately, that I fucked myself in the end because I never finished that. I released the first part, giving my bottom 5 out of the top 10. That was a weird way of saying it. The first half of my top 10 list.
It makes sense. It's because it's not the top 5. Certainly, that'd be a lie.
Saying the bottom 5 makes it sound like it's the worst 5 episodes of the show. Okay, you know what?
It's certainly the worst 5 of your top 10. Think about it.
I guess technically, debatably. Anyway, I only released half of my top 10 list. And Bill, our whole thing was we're going to review this at some point, and Bill's like, if I ever finish watching it.
Well,
and, he dragged his fucking feet on that one, as per usual.
As everything in my life.
And then like a month ago, we were like, or no, not even a month ago. It was like 2 weeks ago on the show. We were like, we should review. You were like, we should review Zyuranger on the show. And I was like, do you have time to watch? Because he had only watched the first 5 episodes at that point. He had like 45 episodes to guzzle down over the course of these 2 weeks.
Which hadn't really hit me when I asked that.
Which sounds perfectly doable until you remember that this is Bill that we're talking about.
Who puts off everything until the last minute.
But he did it. I was very impressed.
I did it. I didn't put it off until the last minute. So yeah, our plan...
Pat on the proverbial back.
Oh, thanks. Oh, it feels so good. I really had a big itch there all day. Really appreciate it. So, oh yeah, get out that back scratcher, bro. Oh, yeah, thanks. Without visual context. This is terrifying. Yeah. This is terrifying for the listeners.
We're miming things, which is a terrible thing to do in a podcast. Or in life in general.
So, Dylan, we are indeed going to be discussing Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger tonight.
Yes.
And I did indeed watch every goddamn episode, all 50 of them, which isn't really as impressive as a feat as it may have come off because they're only 19 minutes per episode.
Yeah.
So it boils down to about an hour and 40 per disc. So, I mean, it's still like, you're still watching like 20 hours of television, but it's not...
Yesterday when I thought we were doing the video, because we were supposed to record last night, but Bill's an idiot. And we...
Oh god, we have to tell them why. We have to tell them why we didn't do this last night.
Well, you can tell them in a minute, I think. I think they deserve to hear it from you, so that they know what kind of a person they're subscribed to. But we have... we were supposed to record this last night, and I was actually running out of time because I wanted to. I wasn't going to rewatch this whole damn series, but what I was trying to say before is that we are actually going to do what I never finished doing before and give our top 10 lists in this video. So you will get to hear the rest of my list in this video if you ever saw the first half of my list. You'll get to hear the second half of it, and if you didn't hear it, then you get to hear all 10 for the first time. Good on you. But we're both going to give our top 10 list. So anyway, I wasn't going to rewatch this whole damn series because I'm not a crazy person, but I was going to
Not
rewatch.
about this anyway.
But I was going to at least rewatch my top 10 episodes, and I actually put it off longer than I should have, and I was running out of time yesterday, so I had to use because I thought that I had to like get done by like 10 at night when we were supposed to record. So I actually used my VLC media player settings to watch like the last 5 entries on my list at double speed.
Are you real? Are you serious?
Yeah, so I was able to pack in, 20-minute episodes in the span of 10 minutes, and I gotta say, this show at double speed is like a squirrel on crack. It's insane. You should
Dylan,
you should go back and like watch some of the more.
I was gonna say because that's crazy. Because the thing I wanted to say about the show, we can get more into this later. I just want to say it now because you brought it up. It's insanely fast paced, and that is both an awesome thing and at some points a problem. But we'll get to that. So yeah, we're gonna be discussing Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger tonight. But yeah, we were supposed to record this last night. And I'll tell you guys why, because A, I don't mind making myself look like an idiot. I don't care. I have no shame. And also, it's pretty fucking hilarious. So, last night, I was taking a shower, getting ready to do this show, having good thoughts about Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. I usually do like to shower before I do this show. Helps me get my thoughts together, particularly in this instance, because there's so much to cover, and I'm even mad at us for wasting time talking about this right now. But
Now, now I'll have a lovely mental image every time we're about to do an episode.
I'm just like, oh, Bill's showering right now.
Whenever you're
Mix.
like, I'll be there in like 30 minutes, I'll be like, oh, God.
Me sitting in my shower, putting my thoughts together, or if whatever you want to call it.
Like an 80s style montage of you preparing to podcast. There's like a shower, there's like a raw egg shake, there's all kinds of shit.
Running a mile. I'm late, and you're just like, why are you running a mile before the podcast? Because that's how I do it, Dylan. Don't break my flow.
You don't even have to find the steps from Rocky. You can just run up the steps to your bedroom.
Yeah, that's true. It's plenty. It's plenty fucking endurance training enough. Anyway, that was a weird way to say that. Anyway, so back to the story I was trying to tell. So I go upstairs after my shower. I'm ready. I'm fucking ready to discuss some Zyuranger. And I go to open my door, and I can't. I literally cannot open my bedroom door. And I'm like trying to think as to what might have happened here because my door about like a year ago, the knob was broken and you could barely fucking open it as it was. Like you had to struggle to open it. Like it may as well have been locked anyway. So I was like, did this happen again? And then I'm thinking, nope, I totally locked myself out of my own goddamn room. Which means that for those of you who may not know how doors work, for an indoor lock, there are no outdoor locks. I mean, I guess you could buy one, but
those of you in
I don't know
Japan,
why you would.
those of you who are in Japan and just have to stick your finger through a hole and slide the door, it's much
Oh
more
yeah, they
difficult.
don't even have knobs in the doors.
Much more difficult here. So
We podcasts have to get canceled because of it sometimes. So I locked myself out of my room, and I texted Dylan, and I was like, first I was like, I might be a little late because I'm having some potential issues. And I thought that I'd be able to go downstairs, get a real adult, and then solve the problem fairly quickly. But apparently there are no real adults in this house because none of us knew what to fucking do. Because we used to have a universal key that you put, because most doors that have a privacy lock, again, for those who don't have a door, if you actually want to lock yourself out of your room, you can try it at home, kids. You have to turn the lock as you're leaving the room, then close the door, and then you're locked out. So just in case any of you want to try that.
Joe Rogan talked about this in a stand-up special once, where he's like, "Remember when you were a kid and you thought there were real adults, and then one day you grow up and you realize nobody knows what the fuck they're doing, and you just freak out."
It's exactly what happened to me last night. I was like, nobody knows how to open a locked door. What is my life? Who are these lunatics who raised me, who don't know how to open locked doors? I mean, they knew, but they just didn't know where the fucking universal key was.
I
Because
guess
what you
they
have to
never
do.
had to use that knowledge because they never locked themselves out of their own room, Bill.
Oh no, this has happened in my house before. Trust me. I've never been directly the cause, but I have been present as doors have been locked, as rooms have been left. So basically, after like 10 minutes, I was like, I have no idea what to do. Literally, my entire life is in my room. I didn't even have clothes out of my room. I had to put on like a pair of my dad's sweatpants and fucking try and do shit. I had no clothes. It was fucking great. So
Well, you just got out of
then
the shower. Did you have like clothes on, or did you?
no, I had a towel, and then I had to put sweatpants on to get my goddamn door open.
This
So that way I wasn't
this,
sitting up there naked trying to open my door.
this makes it even funnier. Oh my god. So you're fucking naked in a towel, and you can't get into your room,
Exactly.
and then you have to text me and be like,
Naked in a towel, Dylan, I can't do podcasts because door is locked.
oh, this is great.
So then I texted him and I was like, I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I can't figure this out. I can't do this tonight. So we'll put it off until tomorrow. We were supposed to record another video tonight anyway, so we're just gonna do that one another night, and we decided to do this one tonight. So what ended up happening was I put my phone down because that's an important part of the story. Um, and then I went downstairs and I got a skewer, or I think that's what it's called. It's one of those things you put shish kebabs on
Yeah.
when you're making shish kebabs. And I stuck that in the tiny hole on the front of my doorknob, and I just fucked around in there for a while until finally, because it's not that hard to actually open the door when it's locked. You just have to touch a pressure plate on the inside of the door and it'll open. For those of you who may do this to yourselves, because it's not that uncommon. Apparently, people do it as if you know Dylan might be fucking making you think like, oh, only retards leave the doors locked. No, common everyday folk, Dylan.
Well,
You
I
may at
hear
one point lock the inside of your door.
I hear of people, locking themselves out of their cars or shit like that. I've never heard I can't get into my own bedroom. uh,
Well, because usually it's implied that there's an outdoor lock and you locked it on the outdoor lock with the keys inside. That's usually what happens. But that did not happen this time. Or you lock the inside of the thing. It's the same principle. Like if you lock your keys inside of your car, you lock the inside of the car, you leave the keys in there, then you close the door. It's the same idea.
yeah.
Just in this instance, there's like really no way to get in. It's kind of more fucked. But I looked it up.
This
I
would be
did.
this would be like if the Chinese had built the Great Wall of China, and then at the end of it realized that they were standing on the wrong side.
So Dylan, let's get back to Zyuranger then. So
I
this
love
has been a
how
long.
I love how the Zyurangers have the series Bible for Zyuranger just in their lair, so they can
Oh yeah,
just go at any time
they
and be
do. They
like,
have
let me
they have
look
the
up the exposition that I need.
they do. Okay, so first things first. From the first episode, in the episode "The Birth," as it's called. So you see Geki fucking in the what's it called by the way? What's their base of operations called?
I think they
Do you
refer to
remember?
it as the shrine at some points.
I think it's called the Underground Shrine. Okay, so they go back to they're in the Underground Shrine. This is right after they've been awakened the first time. Spoilers, by the way. We're gonna go back to some shit in a minute. But I just love the scene where Geki is reading the plot of the show to Goshi, who's talked up as being the smartest of all of them.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like,
and he
is Geki
certainly is.
reading this to catch himself up? Yeah, he's definitely is.
Certainly is in most
Go
of the show, but not in this.
Goshi is my fucking man. He's awesome. But
I love how,
Geki,
yeah,
the leader.
he's reading a synopsis of the show for the sake of the audience, but it's
For the
also
audience's
weird because
benefit.
he is one of the five warriors in question.
Yeah,
He's
that's what
reading
makes
this
it
book
weird.
about, and then five warriors were locked away, and I'm like, why don't you just talk about this shit in the or no third no first person? Why don't you
First
just talk
person,
about
yeah.
it in the first person? Like, why be reading it out of a book? Why can't they just have a conversation about, oh, it's fucking weird, huh?
Why do they even have to know what happened to them? They were there, Dylan. They did a lot of the things that were being spoken about.
Yeah.
They were the direct cause. What would have made more sense is if maybe Barza had done it, because maybe he just wanted to like remind them or just get them caught up to speed, or just a lot of this
Or it's just
show
one of
is
those dramatic moments that happens in a Japanese show where one of the characters just spouts off some exposition, not for the sake of informing another character about what happened because they already know, but just for the sake of being cool.
well, I think that's kind of what we have in the show that we have. It just makes 10 times less sense than it needed to, and uh I think what you could have done is you could have had just this is another thing that a lot that this show in particular and a lot of other Japanese shows do. You have the inspirational speech. You have the moment where somebody looks down on another character and goes, "Hey, you, stop being an idiot and be better and rise up and you're the warrior of hope and you're all that crap."
Yeah.
And they're inspired to do a great thing. You could have just had a moment like that because you could have had them come out of the fucking hibernation, look out at Bandora destroying what I think is supposed to be Tokyo. I think we've had this conversation before,
I
but it's
think
supposed to be Tokyo.
I'm pretty sure it's Tokyo.
Yeah, because I think you see the tower.
If only there was. I can't remember any shots of the
Yeah, I
tower.
remember. No, no, the tower is in it. It's a plot point at one point. I
Okay.
don't remember what episode,
Okay.
but
See,
I
that's
do remember a moment where Bandora was like, "Destroy Tokyo Tower."
that's right. Okay. See, you've watched all 50 episodes, whereas I just rewatched my top 10. So I
No, fair
couldn't
enough.
remember. I couldn't remember if the Tokyo Tower was ever seen. So they're definitely in Tokyo then.
Yeah,
Except
definitely.
for random,
Not that you'd ever know, because they just call it the city,
except for episodes where they're like randomly in the wilderness or whatever.
which is every episode. Because well, I was watching. I also rewatched Lance Mister Fusion's video about Zyuranger in preparation for this video as well because he knew a bunch of shit and that's what introduced me to this. So I wanted to watch that to see the thing that introduced me to this to this franchise again and sort of see what I thought of it, having watched the show myself finally and have my own opinions of it. But in that, he mentions that what's different between the Zyurangers and the Power Rangers that took their footage, and we'll get to that in a second, is that the Zyurangers can't teleport, but the Power Rangers can. The Zyurangers have to take their motorcycles or they have to walk somewhere to fight evil, but the Power Rangers can teleport.
Yeah.
That's not really true because the Zyurangers get teleported constantly in this
Right, but
show.
it's never them doing the teleporting. See,
No, it's always them being it's done to them.
the
Yeah,
Power Rangers have like instant transmission. Whenever the Zyurangers teleport, it's because either the Guardian Beasts or Bandora wanted to send them to a location, and sometimes it happens like right after an explosion, and then they'll get sent to like some weird like little magical bubble where there's like just a dark room with a tree, and they have to fight a monster, and then like
that's so much of this show.
that's Sentai for you. You gotta love it.
It's just alternate dimensions with trees.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. There are dark rooms with trees where they fight a couple.
That's literally. I remember. I remember.
I think it's in the two-part pilot, which I'll talk about more later.
Well, I remember a dark room, and there's a cage in the middle,
Well, there's definitely
and
in the second part of the pilot, there's definitely a dark room when they're fighting Dora Skeleton, and then after they defeat Dora Skeleton, Dora Titan just like breaks through the fourth wall, and then they all get
yeah, that's a
teleported, and then they all get
yeah.
teleported back into the real world where they have to fight Dora Titan.
That first, yeah, that shot's amazing. By the way, I love that shot so much because you never see anything like that in Power Rangers. Which will bring us into the first part of our discussion of Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, and we wanted to get this out of the way right at the beginning, just because I think every video on YouTube that's about this show is likely to spend most of its runtime going. So this is what's different from fucking Power Rangers,
Yeah,
and
we
we're
don't
gonna
want to
do
do that.
that.
We don't want to do that for the entirety of
No,
this podcast. We just want to.
not at all.
We are going to talk about it a little bit now, just to get it out of the way. Mostly Bill because he has a better memory for Power Rangers than I do.
And I have less of a as less as good of a memory as I would have liked to because I would have liked to have rewatched a bit of Mighty Morphin before we did this
Just to see
because
how it compares. Yeah, I thought about doing that
no
too,
no
but then I was like, nah.
but it was also just because at no point I'll say this right now at no point watching this show did I go oh I'm watching Power Rangers like
Right.
I definitely knew it, but the show itself does not make you feel like you're watching the show that inspired Power Rangers. It feels like a completely different thing. And I swear to God, even when I saw footage that I remembered seeing in Power Rangers, I still felt like I was watching a different show. And it has that unique of a personality
Well,
and that unique of a tone.
the first major difference is that Power Rangers is technologically based. All the explanations for what's going on, except for like Rita, obviously she's a space witch. Everything she does is magic. But every little move but the Power Rangers themselves and the Zords and the command center, it's all alien tech. Whereas in Zyuranger, it's a straight up fantasy series.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense why the Guardian Beasts are robots.
They never ever explain that.
So that's the only thing that doesn't make any sense. But everything else, it's a fantasy series through and through. That's why all of the monsters that they fight are based on mythological monsters, which I fucking love. Um,
It's one of my favorite parts of it. Yeah.
It's much more fantasy based. That's the first thing you notice while watching the show. The first thing I remember noticing, and this was way before the DVD release, because long before the DVD was ever released, I watched like the first 11 episodes illegally on the internet. So like a year before the DVD had even been released, when I first saw the pilot for the first time, I remember being blown away because you realize when you watch Zyuranger just how limited Power Rangers was in terms of what stock footage they can use.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Because there is shit in Zyuranger that will blow your mind. That I will talk about again later when we get into our top 10 lists. I don't want to talk too much about it
Right.
right now, but they get to do so much shit in Zyuranger that you would never see. Remember the moments in Power Rangers when they would be fighting in their civilian forms, and the whole time you would just be like, morph already, because the fights in their civilian forms were never nearly as interesting as when they would morph. In Zyuranger,
Because the putties would just stand around and go like this while they like back flipped into them.
yeah,
In this, it's not like
In
that.
Zyuranger, the civilian, not even civilian, because they're all wearing like weird medieval clothes, but the unmorphed fights are super awesome. They're some of my favorite parts of the show because you actually get to see them use their like individual weapons more often when they're just in their normal forms than you do when they morph. When they morph, they all have like the same sword most of them. But but yeah, it's super great. I love the unmorphed fights in Zyuranger.
And you know what it is too? They never spend too much time fighting the golems, as they're called in this. Not the putties in Power Rangers, the golems in Zyuranger. The golems are always wiped out in like 2 seconds.
Yeah,
Like they blow through them. And I mean, not always. Like obviously, there's an episode where they get the different clay, or Bandora gets that new clay, and she makes
yeah,
the new golems, and they're obviously a lot stronger, they're a lot tougher. But otherwise, whenever they just get thrown out to be foot soldiers and to, pad out the episode's action, it never feels as padding because they blow through them quickly enough and it's done in an entertaining way. So you don't mind sitting there watching them do it because it's quick, it's entertaining, and just
yeah,
it's more colorful. They're doing more stuff.
yeah.
In
In
Power Rangers, it's
hindsight,
just
Power
it's like
Rangers,
watching.
at least 10 minutes of your episode is them back flipping in the presence of putties with like guitar music desperately trying to make it interesting. And that's
And I mean, I like the synth music in Power Rangers because or the guitar riffs because like it gives it this very heavy metal like.
oh
And I
yeah.
think it works
And
with Rita as well. So it
I
works. It
love
gives it this very heavy metal like feel.
I love the music in both series actually pretty equally.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the one thing between the two shows that I can say that I love pretty much equally, and it's just because they fit each show perfectly. Because the synth music that we have in Power Rangers it fits better with the more technological bent that they took with that series, whereas the Japanese music fits more with what Zyuranger is, which is high fantasy with random robots.
Exactly. But Dylan, let's just cut through all the bullshit, all the
Well, there
specifics.
was one question.
Hang on, let me. Okay, go ahead.
There was one question I wanted to ask you specifically.
Okay, go hit me with it.
How long into watching Zyuranger did you get over the initial weirdness of seeing the Power Rangers like in a Japanese series? You know what I mean?
Instantly,
Instantly?
instantly, without a second thought.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I remember it was definitely before I got through like the first two-parter, I had adjusted to it, but there was definitely like this initial. There's always this initial like weird thing of like, oh, it's the Power Rangers and they're speaking Japanese, and
I feel that. I feel that. And I definitely had that, but Dylan, it happened for me before I ever got my hands on this show. Like it happened for me when I watched, Mr. Fusion's video.
Mhm.
Because he goes into all the depth and everything, and he explains the differences, and he breaks down the very, 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 very basic plot of Zyuranger. Because like watching that today, I was like, damn, this is like bare bones outline shit. Like even the shit that like he did get into detail with, I was like, wow, there's a lot missing there. But I mean, thank God. That means when I finally went and watched it myself, I was able to enjoy all the
It
details
would
for
take
myself.
3 hours to describe the entire plot of the show because
Oh yeah,
so
definitely.
much stuff happens. I had to do a similar thing when I did the first half of my top 10 list. That video, I did like just basically a minute worth of like background information where I just explained the basic premise of the show and who Bandora was and who the Zyurangers were and just sort of set up what the fight was about basically before getting into the episodes. And that's all you can really do is give the bare bones premise because going into any more detail than that would take forever.
And also spoil the fun of it because so much of this show is just it drops you in and then we're off.
Oh yeah.
It drops us into the conflict of the week or the ongoing conflict of the past couple weeks or past couple minutes as it was for me binge watching it. And then we're off and we're just into the action and we're into the story. And that's what I love about it. But Dylan, Yeah, but anyway, just back to the question you asked me. I thought it was going to be weirder. I thought it was going to be more of an issue. I thought it was going to be that this show is going to be just a lot of me going, God, I wish I was watching Power Rangers right now. And that was even though I knew everybody I've ever heard talk about it go how much better it is. And despite enjoying what I'd seen of it prior to actually sitting down and watching it, but I genuinely expected to sit down and go, I wish I was watching Power Rangers right now, or I feel like I'm watching Power Rangers with random Japanese people put into it. But
Yeah.
no,
You know, the first
it
time I watched it,
immediately.
before I actually hit play, I think I was sort of going into it kind of with a similar attitude where I was like, am I going to like this as much as Power Rangers? But as soon as the theme song started to play, Jew
That's the
Rangers
thing.
has an amazing theme song. I love it so much. It's the catchiest thing you will ever hear in your life.
I agree.
I have listened to many other Sentai theme songs since then. They're great. I love the Ranger theme. Jetman is a close second to Zyuranger, but my God, is the Ranger theme just the greatest fucking thing.
Because nothing sums up that show like its own theme song, and nothing gets you pumped for that show like its own theme song. Like, I think you can sell me on a show if the theme song is good. Like, you can get me through watching an entire show if the theme song is good. And this is one of those shows where that may have been it. That may have been the reason why I liked it so
Oh,
much,
and
because the theme song was so good.
they do that thing that all Japanese shows do, where at some points in the series there'll be a fight, and in the midst of the fight, the theme song will play. It's the greatest thing ever.
Oh, dude, when it happened at the end, oh, that was so cool.
Yeah.
Especially the at the very end. I mean, even when they weren't fighting, like even when they were just flying off into heaven, I was like, it emotionally resonated with me. Where it was like,
And then
oh,
they
this
have
is
that
it.
great
This is the end.
they have that great clip show during the credits where you see scenes from the series.
Yeah, that was awesome. I love that.
Great.
But okay, so here's the question I wanted to ask you though,
Mhm.
just to wrap up on this whole Power Rangers Zyuranger comparison, because I don't know if there's actually much else I have to say. Let's just
Yeah,
the big question though. This is the
it's
reason why we're even bringing this up.
it's fucking different. We're only doing this section because it was kind of necessary. You
Well,
can't
no, here's the
you kind of can't do a video as an American about Jew Rangers without bringing up the fact, oh yeah, it was Power Rangers also.
well,
Um,
Power Rangers is the context for Zyuranger because well, let me just we'll get to this in a second. Is Zyuranger better than Power Rangers, Dylan?
oh hell yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, that was the question that had to be asked, but also kind of didn't need to be asked. Yeah, it's better.
And I
It's
think
it's considerably better.
And I think the reason is it is every bit as goofy as Power Rangers at points. There are certainly points of amazing storytelling in this show that I think far exceed any of the serious moments that we have in Power Rangers.
Oh yeah,
But for the majority of the series, it's definitely just as goofy and absurd as Power Rangers is.
I would say more so at some instances.
But it revels in that. I don't know. It knows what it is.
It's consistent. It's consistent.
It,
That's what I love
it
about
knows
it.
what it is, and I think it has aged so much better than Power Rangers. Watching old episodes of Power Rangers at this point, honestly, is kind of like pulling teeth. But watching this
Oh yeah,
show,
I completely agree. Yeah.
it really it holds up amazingly. I think because of a it's every bit as goofy, even more goofy and batshit insane than Power Rangers, really. But yet it knows what it is and it plays around with that and it has fun and it's also got those little great storytelling moments sprinkled throughout the series, like genuinely impactful moments that like genuine human drama at points. It's amazing.
Oh, definitely. At several points. I mean, I don't think an episode goes by where I wasn't genuinely, at least, interested to see where it was going.
You're
An
invested.
element of the human
You're
story.
invested.
I was definitely invested the entire time, and it wasn't even just the Zyurangers themselves. It was Barza. It was the supporting cast. It was obviously Barai. I mean, I know he's technically one of the Zyurangers, but he doesn't really feel like a member of the team.
Because a plot in Jew Ranger is like there's a monster kidnapping children and turning them into trees. We have to go stop them and stop Bandora from turning the Earth into a barren wasteland. Like those are stakes, man. You watch
That's the other thing
you
too.
watch
This
Power
show has
Rangers.
stakes. Yeah.
You watch Power Rangers, and a lot of the episodes are like just Rita just like dicking around with the Rangers, like, oh, there's a giant turkey ruining our Thanksgiving. We better go fight it.
You know what it is? Bandora is always trying to hurt someone
Oh yeah,
physically
she is a
and badly, and not always, not always physically. Sometimes just she's trying to ruin. There's one episode where she's like, "I'm going to ruin the sanctity of family."
yeah.
That's the episode where,
She's an amazing villain. She literally works for Satan, and
yep, that's
she just wants to ruin all that is good in the world. It's an amazing villain. It's such great stakes. I love it. She's got that that Wicked Witch of the West thing going on because she's always like riding around on a bicycle in midair. I don't
Yeah.
remember if they ever used any of that footage in Power Rangers because
It's all over Power
is it
Rangers.
is it I couldn't
Yeah,
remember if they did or
yeah.
not, but they do it in the
It's always shown in the viewing globe, though.
okay. They never actually like show her on Earth just flying around on a bicycle.
I think they do it. I think they do in Doomsday, which is the finale.
Okay, but yeah, she rides around on this bicycle and like she's generally menacing, and she has a much better name than Rita Repulsa, and she has a great theme song.
She
My
she does.
my favorite part of this show is when she sings the Bandora song. It's
You mean like every time she sings it? Because it's not just one time.
no,
It's several times. It's not every episode, thank
I
God,
love
because otherwise I get sick of
I
it.
love the first time she does it, and when they do it in the finale because that's just the best. Her and all her minions, they got their like hands on their shoulders, they're doing the Rockettes kicks. It's great.
Yeah. Well, which part during the finale when they sing it when they've been captive, when they've been
Oh, no,
captured, or when they've been? I'm sorry, I
not
couldn't
when they're
talk
in the
this.
jar, when they're coming down to Earth all triumphantly.
Oh yeah, no, that's awesome.
Because
That's
at that point, Bandor's like, I fucking won this. Let's go out and sing. Like,
Dora, 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 Bandor. It's
it's
great. Yeah,
amazing. I love it.
it's so fucking entertaining. And
I don't know
and
what I
and
like. I don't know what I like better, the awesomeness of the theme song or just the ridiculousness of the Bandora theme.
yeah, I mean, Dylan, you touched on pretty much everything I was gonna say anyway about comparing this to Power Rangers. But I just think consistency is a big part of it. Power Rangers is watching a '90s sitcom with Japanese stock footage inserted into it.
Right.
And I think that that's why it has more broad appeal. Like, I don't think you can show anybody who likes Power Rangers Zyuranger and expect them to like it. And I'm not even saying that in terms of, like, the language barrier or the culture gap. I'm just saying that in terms of they're completely different things from a concept level. Like you said, Zyuranger's a high concept fantasy, and it is that throughout. Power
You're saying you don't think a diehard Power Rangers fan could get into Zyuranger? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Because isn't
not by virtue,
that
not just because they're a Power Rangers fan, as I'm saying.
oh, okay? Because that's an interesting statement considering that you did. Um, but
I know, but I don't think my liking Power Rangers is why I liked this as much as I did. I got much more of a watching a Toho movie vibe from watching this. Not even and not because of the special effects or anything,
that's true. That's
but
true. You do have the other Tokusatsu fandoms.
that's the thing. I'm a huge Tokusatsu fan anyway, so this being 19-minute bursts of crazy, crazy
Over
Tokusatsu
the
shit.
top tokusatsu, and in some moments, some of the like the best looking tokusatsu I've seen. Some of the fights. I'll talk about one particularly when we get into our top 10 list. But some of the fights are amazing in this show.
God, the first fight between the Zyurangers and Barai is amazing.
Mm.
I love that shot, and this is just because I'm gonna forget it when we actually get to that episode. But I love that shot where Barai, he does the Dino Buckler because you can't call it morphing in this. I guess you just call it transforming. I'm gonna call it morphing though once or twice because I'm gonna
Right.
fuck up.
I'm just gonna use the word morphing for convenience sake.
Fair enough.
You could say transforming, or you could say henshin because that's the Japanese term. But
Henshin. Yeah.
but yeah.
I love that shot where Daijujin like has to bend down and look over the corner to see Barai as he transforms, just to see who he is. Cause like, who is that motherfucker? And
Yeah.
Daijujin's like, holy shit, it's another Zyuranger.
Yeah, that was a great reveal. Also,
I love
I
that.
love the moment when he does like that green Kamehameha, and I'm like, why doesn't he do that more often in this show?
He never does that again. I mean, he seems to have an ability to manipulate energy that the other Zyurangers don't, because Geki's only able to do it once he has the Soken, as it's called, which is the Dragon
That's
Dagger in
definitely
this.
one thing that I would level as a criticism of the show. He should have used those powers more often because it plays in great later on in the series when they learn what their like individual attributes are, and he's the warrior of power, so it makes sense that he would have like energy abilities that the others.
Which is very clear from the second he pops up and is like, "I'm gonna take over the world,"
But so it kind of makes
because
sense.
that's what he says.
Yeah, he's not creepy at all.
Not at all.
But
Oh, he definitely doesn't immediately establish himself as a villain, breathing fire. Well, he doesn't really breathe fire, but he shoots up off the table and goes, "Bah!" and he like shoots smoke out
I
of his
know
mouth.
it's great.
And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this guy is definitely not going to be trouble at all."
Was
But
and that elf kid like seemed to love him, so is he just playing nice last 170 million years ago? Um,
He wasn't being very nice to him 170 million years ago. He was kind of being just off in the distance, like
No,
doing some kicks and shit. He
I
wasn't.
think
There was no
he
moment.
saved the kid from a boulder once, and I think that kind
Yes.
of gave the kid an impression of him that was not exactly accurate.
Well, hang on. We'll get back to Barai because there's so much to say about Barai. I'd like to talk about him in depth as one section. So anyway,
That's
back just to finish up on Power Rangers, then we can move on with the shit we clearly want to talk about. This show just it's hard to put into words. It's okay. It's kind of better than Power Rangers inherently, though, is the thing. Power Rangers cannot be better than this simply because Power Rangers is footage from this show hobbled together with people desperately trying to figure out what they can put around it. Because that's what early Power Rangers was, and the show's formula grew out of that. So it grew out of, well, we've got a bunch of kids chilling out at some place, then the ground shakes and a monster attacks, and they jump into Japanese stock footage to go save the day. And Dylan, I think you'll agree, that stuff with them hobbling stuff together because whatever they can come up with that'll make sense around the stock footage is definitely the worst part about Power Rangers,
yeah,
right? It's
that's the inherent problem with the show.
yeah, it's that it's people desperately trying to make sense out of Japanese footage with a completely different premise, and also it's them trying to make money with it. So it's like a double whammy, you know? It's like they're not even trying to tell a good story with the
If
nonsensical shit.
American audiences at the time hadn't been so against dubbing, they would have been so much better off just dubbing Zyuranger. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but I don't know, because I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I'm mad that Power Rangers got made. Obviously not, otherwise we wouldn't be
no,
here
no,
today.
I just think that
But
I don't know. It's just
certainly would have preferred. I would have liked to have seen a dubbed version of Zyuranger.
there's almost a bit of anger though, isn't there, when you watch this show and this is the first time we've ever gotten a DVD of this in America, and you realize that this is what the Japanese had it back in '93, and we have been denied that for all these
92.
years. '92, whatever. We have been denied that for all these years, and we got the Power Rangers version. Not to say that I hate the Power Rangers version, but it's just like we got this.
But we got the version that doesn't hold up anymore versus the version that holds up fine
Yeah,
for what it
we grew
is.
up with this and thinking that this was the shit, when in reality, this was the shit, and had been since the fucking '70s.
All right, Dylan. So let's talk about why Zyuranger is exactly the shit. So Dylan, I want to know what exactly. I mean, we've kind of already gotten into it a bit, but what about this show just really makes you just go, "I want that in my life"? What do you love so much about it?
Oh, several things. As I said before, it's batshit crazy and insane, and I love that.
Yeah,
It's everything you love about tokusatsu. It's everything that people love about Ultraman and Kamen Rider and Godzilla and shit like that is in this series. That's definitely a part of
yeah,
its DNA, and yet it also combines that with like the superhero genre, and that's like the whole point of Sentai is it's like a combination of tokusatsu and superhero. So if you love those two things, you ought to love Sentai, in my opinion. It's that you have great characters, an amazing villain. Um, you have the theme of the mythological monsters, which is something that appeals to me particularly. You have just all kinds of things that really make this show great and sort of elevate it to the point where, out of the Sentai that I have seen, and I haven't seen a great deal of them, I'm pretty much a newbie to the world of Super Sentai, but out of what I've seen, Zyuranger is not only the first, but definitely my favorite. With Jetman being a close second, I really wish they would go back a year and do a DVD release of Jetman, because that show is fucking amazing. Um,
Which ones have you seen, by the way?
in full, Zyuranger and Jetman, and now I'm getting into Ranger. And I've seen like little bits and pieces of other stuff too, like around, just out of curiosity. Like I would like sometimes I'll be like, I want to check out like a little bit of Gingaman, see how I like that because I love Lost Galaxy. You know, I've sort of done research into the other series without actually sitting down to watch them. The only ones I've sat down and watched in full is Zyuranger and Jetman, and now I'm getting into Ranger because I tried to watch a more recent Sentai. I was very impressed with the costumes for Ninja, the one from last year, and
Yeah,
so I tried to watch that when it came out. I watched the first episode, and that's when I realized that modern Sentai are toy commercials. They're just toy
yeah.
commercials. There's no attempt at telling a good story like there was. The '90s, from what I have seen, is really the golden age for Sentai. I haven't ventured into the '80s and the '70s so much, so I can't comment on the older stuff. But everything I've watched so far has been from the '90s, and that is amazing. And then at some point along the way, it's just turned into abject silliness. So I can't really get into the newer Sentais, at least from what I've seen. And I kind of had that with Kamen Rider too when we've been at G Fest and we've seen some of the newer Kamen Rider stuff. It
Mm.
just seems like it's been devolving.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, well, because some of that stuff that we watched, I was just like, it's just a bunch of action figures on screen punching each
And
other. I have no
even
idea what's going on.
and even Ultraman, which always has tried more.
That too, yeah, definitely. A little bit of the newer stuff. It felt like,
Well,
what is
well,
this?
Ultraman still tries to tell a story, but they are starting to go down that path where it's all about gimmicks, and you got the little spark dolls that you put in the thing to summon like monsters and shit. And it's just the more recent series of Ultraman that I've seen have started to go down that sort of gimmicky road as well. So I think it's just an ongoing problem for more just too far in the silly direction. I praised Zyuranger for being batshit crazy and silly and insane, but you got to take yourself seriously at the same time.
It plays it straight though. Is the difference?
Yeah,
And it also it isn't. It's
it
not
doesn't
abject
feel
silliness.
it
Like
doesn't
you said, it
feel
doesn't.
it doesn't feel like a toy commercial like Ninja does. It feels
I
like
completely agree.
feels
That's the
like a
one thing you could
story.
say about Zyuranger. Yeah.
It feels like a legitimate story that just happens to have cool toys in it.
Well, that's the thing too, is that Zyuranger isn't all about like we're gonna show you as flashy of stuff and as big and explosive as stuff as we can. It's all about what makes sense to build to and what makes sense to introduce at certain points. I mean, God, how long does it take them to actually form Ultimate Daijujin? It
Ultimate
takes them,
Daijin that
yeah.
happens in episode
That's when
31.
Great Satan first appears. That's
Episode
almost towards the end of the
episode
show.
31 they form Ultimate Daijujin. They don't even get regular Daijujin until episode 6.
That's the thing. That's the thing I was about to say. We don't get Ultimate
Slow
Daijujin
build.
until almost the end, and then we don't get
That's another thing.
the even normal Daijujin. By the way, we're tossing around terminology and plot points like people know. Daijujin is what the original Megazord was called in the
Right,
original
right, right.
version.
And that's another thing that I think about this show that's better than Power Rangers. In Power Rangers, everything just sort of gets handed to them. Like Billy will be like, "I invented a new thing. Let's use it in battle." Whereas in Zyuranger, they like have to like unlock these powers. Like they go on like these little mini quests and shit to like get new weapons and things. Like you have to see them going out and trying. Like forming Ultimate Daijujin isn't just a matter of King Brachion showing up someday and being like, "I'm gonna be on the team now." They have to like go and like enlist his
He
help.
tries to kill them. I mean, he doesn't technically. Titanus, as he's called in Power Rangers, does the same. Like that happens in Power Rangers. By the way, that was the scene that probably harkened back the most to Mighty Morphin for me. Was when Barai and Geki were in the swamp going up to
You
get
mean you
the
mean
Thunder Slingers, as they're called.
you mean that's the scene in Power Rangers that harken back to this the most in your opinion?
Did I not say that?
You said that was the moment in this that harkened back to Power Rangers, and that's kind of vast.
Well, but for my memory though, just
I,
chronologically for my memory.
I get you. Yeah, I get what you mean. It's just kind of bass backwards when you think.
Well, okay, what I should have said was harkening back to watching Power Rangers as a kid.
Mm.
Because I remember seeing that episode for the first time where Tommy and Jason had to put aside their differences. I was thinking of Power Rangers. They would always introduce character conflicts at the beginning of an episode and just like, this is a thing now. We don't like each other anymore.
Yeah,
And then for the duration of the episode, they just didn't like each other anymore. And then at
character
the end, they liked
conflicts.
each other again.
The character conflicts in this show, except for like on weird occasions when Bandora will like put a spell on somebody, the
Oh yeah, she fucks with people all the time, but there wasn't a spell in that Power Rangers
but
episode. That was just them.
but the character conflicts in this show are more organic. They're sort of things that carry on throughout the show. And when people get over their shit, they get over their shit, and they're friends for the rest of the way. It just feels more natural. Whereas you're right, in Power Rangers they would have to like invent something for the week. Like I can't think of an example, but yeah, they would have to invent characters.
Well, I mean, like what I just said, where it's like for some reason Tommy and Jason don't like each other anymore, and I think they get into why. But my point is, there was never any indication before that Jason had any problem with Tommy, or that Tommy had any problem with Jason beyond. Well, they tried to kill each other a couple episodes back, but we're gonna forget about
It would have
that.
been super easy to write. I mean, all you had to do, if you had made it an ongoing thing, all you would have to do is like have them both want to like fuck Kimberly, and then it would have been a thing. But
Or I think more of the idea, and this is definitely delved into at some point in Power Rangers because I remember it, is that Jason is jealous of Tommy
mhm.
because he gets all the attention and all the pomp and circumstance, even though he just showed up out of nowhere, and he thinks that he's kind of stealing the spotlight of the leadership away from Jason.
Don't you worry, Tommy. One of these days you'll have your own Power Rangers team, and where will Jason be?
He'll be your sixth Ranger. That's what happened in Zeo. And in Zeo, there was actually a nice little moment.
I was alluding to Dino Thunder, but okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, Tommy took over the Rangers the next season. So he became. What's great is that Tommy does actually become the leader while Jason is still on the team, because in season 2, when he becomes the White Ranger, Zordon is like the new leader of the Power Team, and Jason's sitting there right there, just like, this is great. And it's like, but wait a second, dude. What are you, high? Like, that dude totally just fucked you. Like, he just stole your leadership from you, gave it to the guy who fucked off for a season. So why aren't you more upset? You spent the whole episode of being upset last season. Why aren't you upset now?
Yeah, I think I just realized
Anyway,
the character conflicts in Power Rangers are a bit more juvenile than they are in Zyuranger, aren't they?
oh,
Because in
definitely,
Power
dude.
Rangers,
Everything is more juvenile.
It's like I'm the coolest. No, I'm the coolest. Nah. In this, like Geki doesn't really hate Burai. It's a one-sided hatred in that
Very
relationship.
much so
But
doesn't hate Barai.
Burai has like a legitimate reason for wanting to get revenge on Geki. It's not just
I
like
mean,
a
it's misguided.
sure it's misguided. I'm just saying that from his standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, he has a reason to hate the guy. It may be a stupid reason, but he has a reason for hating the guy. It's not just like, yeah, I'm jealous because he gets to be the Red Ranger and formed Daijujin and then.
I mean, that is kind of his reason, though. That's why he becomes a Zyuranger. He becomes a Zyuranger because he doesn't think that Geki is deserving of the power,
How he
and he
actually
is.
became a Zyuranger
They never explain that. He just is.
is a mystery.
They're surprised. We're surprised. He seems a little surprised. Like, everybody's surprised.
Yeah.
Even Barza and Gnome are surprised when he turns into the Dragon
So
Ranger.
that's
It's like
that's never
nobody
really
has
explained.
any idea where he got these powers
We don't
from.
know where he got his Dino Buckler.
We know where we.
I'm guessing maybe it was like a lost Dino Buckler that was out there in the world somewhere, and he like found it. Um, maybe
Well,
while
I
he
mean,
was out in the fairy forest. I don't know.
it almost plays like he created the power through his will, because he's just like, I wanted to become a Zyuranger, so because the lines of dialogue are like, he wanted to become a Zyuranger, so he trained every day until he became a
Yeah,
Zyuranger, and
but
it's
he
like,
had to have,
well, did he become a Zyuranger through his training? Like, what the fuck?
but he still had to have acquired those powers because he has his own guardian beast.
Well, yeah, but Dragon Caesar is at least explained in the sense that when he shows up, because he pops up at the very last episode of that arc, so he's only evil for one episode, and Barza is like, "Oh, I always thought there were more guardian beasts out there. I never really thought to look, though, you know."
I never really thought to look.
So, and he doesn't say that, but that's just how I always took it.
And we wind up
But
meeting two more guardian beasts. Who knows if there's any more?
well, he seems to imply that there are, but we'll get back to that. I've got more things to say about that
I don't
part.
know if all the Super Sentais are supposed to be in continuity with each other, but if they are, and if
Well, I mean, they all crossed over with each other at one point.
so, his line of I always thought there might be more guardian beasts out there could like allude to the other like mystical robots that we have in the other series. Is maybe
Yeah,
the
but some of them aren't mystical though, and some of them aren't
some
alive.
of them are, but like just to give an example, we got the Chi beasts in Zyuranger. I could believe them being related to the guardian beasts from Zyuranger in some fashion. It must be some race of benevolent mystical god robots that watches over the planet for some reason.
I was thinking that, and I would never, ever want this explained in the show,
No.
but I always thought it would have been cool if the idea was supposed to be that.
We get explanations in Zyuranger when we need an explanation.
Well, yeah.
It never tries to over explain everything, and I think that's good.
Well, because it's too fast paced for that, and it's too focused on what's important for the moment to moment narrative that it doesn't have time for shit like that,
Yeah.
unless it is important to the current narrative. But what I was gonna
Anytime
say,
watching the show when you have a logic question about it, just go with it. Just fucking
oh
go
yeah,
with it.
but it's never you're distracted instantly by something exploding or by some weird monster or by something a character said, that there's never a moment where you're like, oh fuck this show because I don't understand that. There were so many leaps in logic that I dwelled on for only a second, because in the next second I was like, ooh, flashy colors, I'm into this again.
Right.
Um, and I'll say that in a second. But what I was gonna say before was, I thought it would have been, what makes the most sense to me is that this ancient civilization, because the other question is, how are there people at the same time as dinosaurs? That's the other question. And I think that what it could be is that they're all aliens, and that the guardian beasts are like, but they're like the ancestors of an alien race that like crash landed on Earth during the time of the dinosaurs.
Right.
They evolved alongside
That's
dinosaurs.
been my assumed explanation for the guardian beasts all along because it's the only way I
Oh,
can.
okay.
That's the only way I can explain to myself in my head how they're gods and robots at the same time.
And how they can combine together to form a bigger god, and then they can form an ultimate version of that god. There's an
Basically,
alternate god.
my theory is that a bunch of Transformers, um, possibly from the planet Spider, as in
Potentially.
as in Spider-Man, came to Earth at some point, and then like they got worshipped by humans, and apparently there were humans around with the dinosaurs. That was the first conceit of the series, so I immediately just wrote that off and was like, okay, whatever.
Again, I knew that so far long before I watched it that it just didn't even phase me.
Humans and dinosaurs living together, mass hysteria, whatever. Um,
True. 170 million years ago, when there were T-Rexes running around, which is not true at all.
at the same time as mammoths and saber tigers.
Yeah, that's saber tigers too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I just love how in the pilot they're just like they each worshipped a dinosaur and they're doing a pan shot of the saber-tooth tiger and the mammoth and I'm like, wait a minute,
Also,
that's not a dinosaur.
mammoth is the only guardian beast that has the word Jew in it. So it's called Jew Mammoth. And I thought, okay, so all the guardian beasts are going to have like the Jew at the beginning of their names. Like it'll be like Jew Triceratops. No, the others are just called Triceratops, Saber Tiger, Pteranodon, uh,
And then is this called Tyrannosaurus? Yeah,
Tyrannosaurus. Sometimes I saw it spelled with a Z, so I guess it's Tyrannosaurus. I don't know.
I never saw that. Damn, that's weird.
But I'm not sure if that was in. That face you made was like.
Because I don't remember that at all. I didn't remember any moment where it was a Z.
I'm not sure if that was actually on this DVD or in like the bad.
That's what I'm thinking. It could have been that other version you
It could
watched.
have been
Yeah.
the bad translation that I read online. I don't know. I like it with a Z though. Tyrannosaurus. That's kind of cool.
I'm
Um,
fine with it. I mean, I have no problem with it. I'm literally makes no difference. But you know, uh, you know,
but you were in the
what I
midst
was,
of you were in the midst
yeah, what I was
of deep
trying to
thoughts about
say,
why this show works.
what I was trying to say, I completely forgot what I was trying. I think I was just trying to make a point that I think that the guardian beasts are supposed to be like alien mechs that are instilled with AI that like think they're god or whatever. I mean, obviously that doesn't really work in the context of the show because Satan is a thing, but he also seems to be an alien because he comes from deep space. So
Which
I
they
think he's
which
supposed.
they call hell. So I think it's just supposed to be another dimension. And when he pops out of it, he's up in space, and then he comes to Earth. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, also, Bandora herself is imprisoned on another planet in space, and it's like, but Nemesis planet is in the pilot, and it's never brought up
Well, they
again.
specifically mentioned that it only comes near Earth's orbit like every 23 million years, which is why it made
Oh, my bad.
which is why it made for a good prison for Bandora.
Right,
So
right,
after
okay.
she gets released, that planet just buggers back off to wherever the fuck it came from. And then the rest of the series, she makes her base on the moon, like in Power Rangers, except there's no weird gravity shit because all of that actually happened on Nemesis.
Right, exactly. And okay, but what's also hilarious about the pilot of Zyuranger is they're like, so we've discovered a new planet. This is the first time we're traveling in between planets. Children, would you like to come along and not wear space helmets?
Yeah, I like that they bring along kids. Yeah, that's a great idea in hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Like it's just there because there always have to be. This show is if there aren't children in peril, nobody cares. There always have to be
Right.
children in peril.
And there's
And
actually a reason for it. It's not just a cheap thing. It has to do with Pandora's motivations, which I don't want to talk about right now because that's on my top 10 list later. But but Pandora has very specific motivations, and a facet of her character is that she is not big on children. So many of her plots involve torturing children psychologically or upright killing them in some cases.
oh, by the way, that's the thing in this too. Actual murder and death, and talking of killing and death
Oh yeah,
in this show,
first
as
thing
opposed to Power Rangers.
first thing she does is banish two astronauts into the vastness of space.
She literally kills two people in the first episode, and it's just like power. And
In
I
like
forget what happens to the
in like
astronauts in Power Rangers.
in like the first 5 minutes, she straight up murders two people, and then tries to drop a boulder on top of some children. Like it's insane.
Yeah, and I mean, also when the cities get attacked in this show, you see people getting hurt, you see blood, you see people
Oh
getting
yeah,
crushed and rubble and
rubble.
stuff.
It's too bad they couldn't use any of that stock footage in Power Rangers because it's all great, but then they would have to explain why all the people running around were Asian. I,
I mean, that didn't stop them from the episode where so in there's an episode where there's a monster called Dora Mirage, and he makes a bunch of golems look like Zyurangers, and they attack people, and that's in an episode of Power Rangers as well. and they just show the footage of the fucking Zyurangers just
Yeah,
fucking up
they
civilians.
kind of had
And I'm
to in
just
that
like,
case.
why didn't they just shoot that though? Because there's no reason. But why didn't they just recreate it? They had the suits.
Yeah, I guess they could have just recreated those scenes, but I
It
guess
wouldn't have looked as good, but that didn't stop them in the past.
maybe it was a budget thing. I mean, Saban, after
That's
purchasing,
fine. That makes sense.
I've always thought that after purchasing the stock footage and creating the original costumes they needed to like film their own shit occasionally, Saban's budget for the rest of it I've always assumed was like $10 and a ham sandwich. Like they just expended all of their budget very early on, and then that's why they have to go through some of the trouble that they go through later to make things make sense. Some
Dylan, do you think that it's a miracle that Power Rangers is as coherent as it is?
A straight up miracle. It's
I think so too. Yeah,
if they hadn't
I think Power Rangers is better than people give it credit for.
if it hadn't been marketed to kids, I don't know that it would have lasted as long.
Oh fuck no! Of course not. No, because you can't get away with that kind of shit with an adult crowd. Because anybody with eyes who aren't like 10 or younger are going to instantly watch that and go, "This is clearly other footage slapped
Retarded.
together."
This is clearly retarded.
And it's just because of like the weird jump from stuff shot on video in 1993 to stuff shot on film in 1991.
That's the other problem with Power Rangers is that there's this huge drop in quality when you go to the stock footage. Even though what's happening in the stock footage is the best part of the show, it's just a weird drop in quality. Whereas with Zyuranger, and it's all been wonderfully digitally restored for the DVD, it looks great. But it's all coherent and all the footage looks fine together. There's no like weird jumping in
It's awesome.
quality. It all just flows perfectly. Whereas in Power Rangers, yeah, it's like super clear 1990s film footage to shot on Shitio Zord using Godhorn or whatever the sword was called.
Well, no, I would actually see, Dylan. I actually think that footage looks better than Power Rangers does because
Really?
Power Rangers. Well, yeah, because Power Rangers looks like it's shot on video. I don't know that for a fact. It could have been shot on film, but I'm pretty sure it was shot on like video cassette tapes. Again, I don't know. It could have been shot on
Oh,
35 or whatever.
were you saying before?
But it.
You were saying before that the Zyuranger stuff was shot on film and the Power Ranger stuff was shot on video.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I got that all backwards in my mind. Yeah, that makes sense.
No,
Point
because
being, there's a weird jump in quality.
well, because I like the grime and the grittiness and the grain of the Zyuranger footage, and maybe it's just because it looks like Godzilla movies from the '60s. That's also part of it too. I mean, I'll agree with the fact that Zyuranger kind of looks like it could have been set in 1965, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That's kind of what I like about it
A
too,
lot
is it's
of
very
it, a lot
timeless.
of it. But then there's times where you can tell that it's the '90s. I don't know.
I mean, like you see certain like cars and stuff. Obviously, it's the '90s, but like the actual quality of the film though, definitely very low, and looks like it could have been shot in 1965. But it looks better than Power Rangers to me because there's more detail, there's more grain. Power Rangers is just like generic video, you know. It looks like again, it looks like a '90s sitcom. So I don't. It's less interesting. It's less and again, it's also because that's the less interesting stuff in the episode. But I think that part of it as well is just the way it looks.
Now the other night,
Um,
because over these past 2 weeks of you watching Zyuranger, we've obviously been texting a lot about Zyuranger. The other night,
yeah.
you made a very strong statement in particular, and
Can I say one? I know what you're gonna say. Can I say one thing before you say that though? Because before we get far away from this.
sure, go ahead.
Okay. I also just wanted to say this one last thing about comparing it to Power Rangers. The people who become the Zyurangers in this, Geki, Dan, Goshi, Boy, and May, they're warriors. They're trained to be warriors. They made a huge sacrifice in putting themselves to sleep 170 million years ago
They're
to
much
fight in this
they're
battle.
much better characters than the Angel Grove kids.
It's not just that. It's not even. Well, yeah, obviously, but it's also just. It's better to watch. Part of the criticism of Power Rangers was always like it makes children violent because they want to recreate the action sequences, and I don't think anybody ever talks about why that was or why that was ever an issue if it ever was an issue, because the kids in Power Rangers get the powers and they can instantly do whatever they want with them. They can fight, they can shoot the lasers, they can pilot the Zords without a second thought. In Zyuranger, they're trained to use this stuff. Presumably, they're warriors. They've made it. Stuff happens to them. It's like you said before. There's stakes.
They're all knights except for two of them. One of them's a prince and the other one's a princess. But the rest of them, they're knights. They're warriors
Yeah.
by trade.
Yeah, exactly.
And it made a
And
lot less sense in Power Rangers when it was like, oh, we know some karate that we probably learned at like a dojo in downtown. You know, we knew
from
some,
some 45-year-old man who's given up on life.
we knew basic judo and cartwheels, and now we have superpowers.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even just the dumb nature of that. It just makes for better storytelling, better children's entertainment, because it's not just like you can have power handed to you, you
No,
know? And it's not like Power Rangers ever did anything interesting with the idea of power being handed to you, because you can do something interesting with the idea of. Can you imagine somebody did like a legit dark version of Power Rangers where they were like,
we
let's take
we kind
five
of
teenagers
we
and
kind of
give them
got
powers?
that with that fan film that half of the people hated and half of us loved. Um,
Yeah, but we saw them after had the powers for a while. I would
yeah,
have liked to have seen day
I
one,
would love a prequel to that.
realistic
I would love
day one, them just being handed the morphers
never
and being like, "Here you go, kid. You can destroy the entire world now
it'll
if you
never
wanted
get
to."
made. It'll never get made because that fan film was so polarizing. But I would love a prequel to that, where we actually see all the shit that they're talking about in like that weird Watchmen plot that they've got going on. Um,
I mean, you could do it without it being Power Rangers. You could just do it as a parody. I mean, you could just have it be a generic team of superheroes who get the powers.
that's true.
Um, and you just literally need that idea of, we literally did nothing to deserve this. We did nothing to build up to getting these powers. You just handed them to us and want us to be good with them and expected that we
Yeah,
would.
and that's I mentioned
And
that
that's not the
before.
way Zyuranger works, and it makes it better for children because it shows them that to get these kind of abilities and to do this kind of, heroic, noble stuff, you have to make a lot of sacrifices and make a lot and do a lot and go through a lot of really horrible stuff to get there. And I appreciated that Zyuranger presented heroism and violence in such a way where it's treated that way.
Yeah, and again, I think I mentioned that before. I think that's a problem that Power Rangers has in comparison to Zyurangers, in that is that so much of Power Rangers is them being handed powers. Whenever they need to write in new powers, somebody hands them to them. Zordon says, "Here's some new morphers. Now your cars," and that's pretty much all the setup they need. Whereas in Zyuranger, they fight for every upgrade. They are constantly having to push themselves to become stronger. It's very much a Goku story. It's all about pushing past your limits and growing more powerful as time moves on so that you can continue to counter Bandora. Because as time moves on, Bandora's plots get much more menacing and much more powerful, and she has bigger things up her sleeve, at least in the big moments. Then there are like the in-between episodes where it's just basic Monster of the Week shit, but that's to be expected. I really don't know why they have to make all these Sentai's 50 episodes long. It might be a stronger thing if they just did like a shorter run and just did the big moments. But
Because I think that a problem with this show, because we've been very, very positive,
oh
obviously,
yeah,
this entire time, but a big problem with the show, I think, is that a lot of it does run together. I do think that it is definitely formulaic.
oh
It's
yeah.
got a formula,
When
and they
we even
stick to it. But it's a Sentai show,
when
so
we get to our top 10 list, I think you'll find that most of the entries on my list, except for a few, are the big moments, because those are inherently the most interesting. But
I actually made my list in such a way where I tried to go for more single ones because I knew you were gonna have all the big moments, and I figured I can just talk about my thoughts on them when we did that.
that's good.
But
That's
I,
good.
I actually found that I actually enjoyed the sort of plot of Monster of the Week plots more than I thought I did, because I usually don't like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I usually find Monster of the Week plots very
it's
boring
always
because it's the
interesting.
same.
It's always interesting in Zyuranger and Sentai in general, from what I've seen, though, because the monsters always have great gimmicks. Um,
That's the thing, is that the show is so fast paced and such a concentrated dose of awesomeness that I don't mind learning about each new monster's gimmicks, seeing them do their thing, seeing them do their new horrifying way of terrifying children and of capturing them and stealing their souls and making it so that Bandora and her minions can eat them without actually just eating
and
them.
many of
Because
the
that's always what they want. They just want to eat them, but
many
just not actually eat them.
many of the Dora monsters that we see, a lot of them are just basic monsters of the week, but some of them are like legitimately good characters, like and really interesting villains. Like there's one who didn't make it on my list, the episode that he's in.
Dora Sphinxes for me is the big one.
Yeah, that one. We'll talk about that later. But there's one that didn't make it on my list called Dora Narcissus. He's like this flower-looking guy, and like he's obsessed with his own beauty. And like
Yep,
he was a really interesting character. He didn't make it on my list just because there were a lot that I liked more than that one. But he was a fun.
that was the one that was in the episode. Was that the one where May
I think that was
had the?
a. I thought that was a. My memory,
Because
obviously.
there's an episode where about flowers and stuff.
Oh,
Because I thought that was the one with the monster called Dora Narcissus. That's what I remembered, but
no,
I
I
could be
think the
wrong.
one I'm thinking of. I think it was a Goshi episode, if I'm remembering correctly. Ghosh. because they always drop the I when they say his name. Nobody ever says Goshi in the show. It's always Gosh, and then the subtitle says Goshi, and you're like, well, I didn't hear that.
He seems to say it more than they do, though. Like, he seems to go, I'm Gush! And it's like, whoa, bro, chill.
I think we're both about ready to start getting into our top 10 lists, but before.
Well, yeah, you wanted to ask me, you wanted to bring up a text message before, so why
Right,
don't you
right.
do that now?
Before we get into our top 10 list, you made a pretty
Yeah.
strong statement the other night, and
Yeah, I did.
I would like to hear you defend yourself. So we were texting, and I just made an offhanded comment about how impressed I was that he had managed to watch the show in 2 short weeks, given how long it took him to watch the much shorter Breaking Bad. And he made the incredibly strong statement, "Oh, this is so much better than Breaking Bad." So
And not only that, then you were like, wow, those are some strong words. And then I was like, and I fucking mean it, too.
yeah,